नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। स्वानुभावम् अखिलश्रुतिसारमेकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अतितितीर्षतां तमोऽन्तम् संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यं तं व्याससूनुमुपयामि गुरुं मुनीनाम्। Prostrations to Shukacharya, who lights the lamp of quintessential jnana in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very essence, Akhila Shruti Saramekam, the very essence of all Shastras, all Vedas and Vedanta. He lights this lamp of jnana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and dispels the darkness of ignorance to all those seekers who are desirous to attain freedom from the shackles of samsara. Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhanasampada shatru buddhi vinashaya deepajyotir namostute. Deepajyotir parabrahma deepajyotir janardanaha deepo haratume papam deepajyotir namostute. Wish you all a very happy Deepavali. Deepavali, festival of lights. And as we celebrate this festival of lights, let us be reminded of the assurance given by the light of all lights, Sri Krishna Paramatma. Tesham evanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavastaha jnana deepena bhasvata. Jnana deepena bhasvata. Krishna declares in the Gita, Tesham evanukam partam, he partha, Tesham, to those. Who are those? Madchitta, madgata prana, bodhayanta parasparam, katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. To those who are constantly contemplating on me here, Arjuna, with love, ever desirous of staying united with me, constantly singing my glories, chanting my names, unable to stay disconnected from me. Satata yuktana bhajatam priti purvakam. To those bhaktas, he says, Tesham evanukampartha. Anukampa here is Bhagavan's grace. Ishta prapti, anishta nivritti. His grace works through to these two actions, Ishta prapti and anishta nivritti. To those bhaktas, out of compassion, evanukampartam aham, Krishna says, aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayam atmabhavastaha. Krishna assures that I shall be established as the object of all their thoughts in their minds, manifesting all my glories. I shall light the lamp of jnana. Krishna gives us this assurance. Jnana deepena bhasvata. He shall light the lamp of jnana, not ordinary jnana, bhakti rupa apanna jnana. Knowledge that matures and takes the form of bhakti. Howso much ever we achieve in life, whatever we amass, affluence, influence, power, position, we are all continue to go through this experience of a lack of completeness, whatever be the stage of life. And we start believing the lie that we need something material to make us complete. And this results in our misalignment with our own nature and misalignment with Krishna. And therefore, we need to light the lamp of wisdom, which alone can dispel the darkness in the head and bring light and lightness to the heart. It is the lamp of bhakti which can make our inner world bright. By lighting the lamp of wisdom, the inner world is made bright. Only when the inner world is bright, we can get everything right in the outer world. The choices that we make in the outer world depend on the clarity that we have in the inner world. Therefore, Krishna assures that to those bhaktas who constantly contemplate on me alone, I shall light that lamp of wisdom and dispel all kinds of darkness. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to see several examples where Bhagavan lights the lamp of jnana in the minds of devotees. And one such example is the example of Dhruva. Dhruva, an inspiring bhakta. Dhruva Charitra in Srimad Bhagavatam is one of the most inspiring episodes. We have so far relished 3 skandhas of Srimad Bhagavatam. We concluded the 3rd skandha of Bhagavatam last week with Kapilopadesha. We find in the 4th skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam the inspiring account on Dhruva Charitra, the historical account on Dhruva's journey from incompleteness to completeness, Dhruva's transformational journey from deprivation to abundance, Dhruva's transformational journey from the ordinary to the extraordinary, transformational journey from deprivation to abundance. Whether we like it or not, life of samsara is characterized by deprivation. We are all deprived of something or the other, or at least we feel deprived. So this is what we can call the mentality of scarcity. That is characteristic of samsara. Whatever we can have doesn't matter. We still feel deprived or something or the other. Because in the life of samsara, we all live through relationships. Now, when I say relationships, it need not be only with animate objects, not just with people. We get related with everything and anything, animate, inanimate. We are related to everything, and mostly we lead our lives through horizontal relationships. And we forget one most important relationship, which is the vertical relationship. The vertical relationship with Krishna. That's where we are weak. And we are constantly striving to strengthen our horizontal relationships. But whether we like it or not, horizontal relationships always go through ups and downs. They're never constant. They keep changing. This is the source of all deprivation. We are always deprived of love, care, attention, respect, honor, resources. Always have this. We are always in the state of deprivation. Why? Because we are only focused at the level of building horizontal relationships. Now, in an ocean, when we swim, we are tossed hither and thither by the waves, and we have a sense of lack of shelter. Now, imagine if there is a rope coming down from an helicopter right above, and we are able to hold on to it. We feel a lot more secure. Vertically sheltered, the waves are no longer a challenge for us. When we are vertically sheltered, when we have a strong vertical relationship with Krishna, the ups and downs in horizontal relationships do not impact us. There can be no deprivation of love, deprivation of respect, deprivation of honor, deprivation of security, deprivation of care. Why? Because we know, come what may, we always have somebody who cares for us. We have always somebody who will protect us. There is always someone who loves us more than we can love him. So source of deprivation is this weak vertical relationship. And whether we like it or not, this is the starting state in the samsaric journey. Dhruva's journey also begins in a state of deprivation. Now, unlike the episodes of Kunti or Bhishma, where we relish Kunti Stuti and Bhishma Stuti, here we can lot more easily relate to Dhruva more than Bhishma or Kunti. Because Dhruva's journey also begins, like all of us, in a state of deprivation, deprived of love, deprived of attention, deprived of honor. And when in a state of deprivation, facing a state of deprivation, we need right direction. Only then we can take the right decisions. When we are deprived, most often we are driven by our lower nature and we take wrong decisions all the time. We think we are deprived of something, and the only way is to get out of the deprivation is to go after asking for more, seeking more, possessing more, and we end up taking the wrong direction. Driven by our lower nature of greed, lust, jealousy, anger, we only make the state of deprivation even more frustrating for us. Luckily for Dhruva, he had a wise mother who gave him the right direction. Deprivation, when it gets the right direction, can actually help. And luckily for Dhruva, he was also blessed. He was also blessed to have none other than Narada Muni himself as his guru, who also ensured that his deprivation is given the right direction. Now, when we see Dhruva's journey, which starts from a state of deprivation, in order for this deprivation to get the right direction, it is important that one heeds to the instructions of the Guru. This is exactly what happens in Dhruva's case. Dhruva totally believed in what was told to him by Narada. Heeding to Narada's instructions, Dhruva takes a leap of faith, which is very, very important in any journey. Taking that leap of faith, heeding to Narada's instructions, Dhruva takes that leap of faith. When he takes that leap of faith, heeding to Narada's instructions, Dhruva starts to acquire and assimilate right knowledge. Right knowledge that helps redefinition of his thinking. Right knowledge helps to redefine our thinking. And when the thinking is redefined, our thoughts get redirected. This is what happens in the case of Dhruva. Redefinition of his thinking. Dhruva started off with a material desire, an unfulfilled material desire. He was deprived of honor, respect, love. And in order to fulfill that material desire, he got the right direction, the right means prescribed to him by Narada. And through right knowledge from Narada, Dhruva began to assimilate the knowledge given to him, and more importantly, he had the right attitude as well. A right attitude also is very important, to ask the right questions in the right manner. This is another thing we learned from Dhruva. So many times, if the attitude is lacking, assimilation of knowledge also becomes a challenge. So Dhruva had the right attitude to ask the right questions. So many times, people ask this question, does God exist? It is similar to asking a question, is a circle circular? If somebody asks, is a circle circular, that shows that somebody has not understood what a circle is. Only if somebody does not know what a circle is, one will ask, is circle circular? Similarly, if one does not understand the very definition of God, then one will start asking silly questions like, does God exist? In the case of Dhruva, the questions were different. How do I find him? It is not about challenging whether God exists or not. After all, Dhruva was a 5-year-old boy. Heeding to Narada's instructions, acquiring and assimilating right knowledge, Dhruva managed to redefine his thinking and redirect his thoughts. When we start to redefine our thinking, the knowledge that Krishna is the source of everything, whatever I need, he is the source. Whatever I need. It does not matter what I need. It does not matter what I want. He is the source of everything. So automatically, that redefinition of my thought process will also redirect my thoughts. Now, I will start thinking all about Krishna, because I know whatever I need, he is the source. He is the giver. And in that process, Dhruva's intellect gets unclouded. And what happens when the intellect is unclouded? When there is ignorance in the mind, intellect is clouded. It cannot discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. It cannot discriminate between shreyas and preyas. What is long-term gain and short-term want? One is not able to make this discrimination. When with this assimilation of this knowledge, intellect gets unclouded. And when intellect gets unclouded, one starts to experience the downpour of blissful grace of Bhagavan. And when one starts to experience Bhagavan's grace, one effortlessly reaches a state of realization. One reaches a state of victory, a state of abundance. The way to Vaikuntha gets cleared. So therefore, if we were to summarize Dhruva Charitra, the essence of Dhruva Charitra is following. When deprivation gets properly directed by a guru, and when one heeds to the guru's instructions with Shraddha and begins to assimilate right knowledge with right attitude, one's intellect gets unclouded and victory is assured, and one reaches a state of abundance. From a state of deprivation to a state of abundance. Now, if we were to cull out the important words from the summary, we get the following words. Deprivation. D. Heeding to Guru's instructions. H. Heedfulness. Right knowledge with the right attitude. R. Unclouded intellect. U. Victory. V. Abundance. A. Surprise, surprise, we get an acronym, Dhruva. Dhruva Charitra is inspiring because we can relate to Dhruva so very easily. His struggle, his angst, the broken heart of a young child, being deprived of basic thing that a child would look for. Honor, respect, love, attention, care. How he rises above this and goes through a transformational journey. How he starts his journey with an unfulfilled material desire and eventually ends the journey saying, I don't care for any more material desires. That is why this journey of Dhruva is so very inspiring and so very relevant to each and every one of us, because all of us, we begin our journey with many unfulfilled material desires, and eventually the goal is to reach a state where material desires do not matter anymore. In the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukha takes up exposition on the historic account on the legends of the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu. As we have seen before, Swayambhuva Manu has 3 daughters and 2 sons. Akuti, Prasuti, Devahuti, 3 daughters of Swayambhuva Manu. And we have already seen Devahuti, the legend of Devahuti and Kapilopadesha. In the 4th skanda, further details on the descendants of Akuti and Prasuti are given, and Swayambhuva Manu also had 2 sons, Priyamvrata, Uttanapada. The 4th skanda covers the historic account on the descendants of Uttanapada. Uttanapada had 2 wives, Suruchi, Suniti. Through Suruchi, he had a son, Uttama. And through Suniti, he had a son, Dhruva. So it is in the process of giving an historical account of Swayambhuva Manu's lineage that we get to Dhruva Charitra. Uttanapada had a weakness for Suruchi. Unfortunately, he was so very partial to Suruchi that he began to neglect Suniti's other wife. And in that process, Suniti's son, Dhruva, also was neglected. He was so very partial to Suruchi that he was only doting on and pampering Uttama, completely neglecting little Dhruva. And once upon a time, Uttanapada was pampering Uttama, keeping him on his lap. And Dhruva was always wanting a place on Uttanapada's lap. To young Dhruva, that was the goal of all goals at that very young age, wanting his father's love and attention. And when he approached Uttanapada and was about to sit on his lap, he was stopped then and there by Suruchi. Suruchi was very devious. She did not want any role for Dhruva. She wanted Uttama to succeed Uttanapada. And therefore, Suruchi stopped Dhruva and not only dishonored him, disrespected him, she also was very harsh, harsh beyond one's imagination. She dealt with Dhruva in such a harsh manner that Dhruva's heart was broken. Suruchi declared to Dhruva that he has no place whatsoever. Forget about Uttanapada's lap. He had no place whatsoever and in the kingdom. And if at all he aspired to the throne, the only way, she said, is go and pray to the Supreme Being. And if you please him, ask him for a birth in my womb. And maybe then you would have an opportunity. Unfortunately for Dhruva, Uttanapada did not speak a word. And therefore, Dhruva was more than shocked. Dhruva was completely heartbroken. And no one around in the palace could come to Dhruva's rescue. And news reached Suniti. When Dhruva rushed back to Suniti, she already came to know what transpired. And she was also shaken. And when Dhruva reached Suniti, Suniti did not have any ways and means of addressing Dhruva's concern, Dhruva's deprivation of love, of honor, of respect. But Suniti was a noble woman, a great bhakta. Therefore, she knew what needed to be done. When Dhruva rushed back, crying, in a state of shock, grief, heartbroken, first and foremost, Suniti tries to bring a sense of balance. The way Suniti responds also demonstrates her nobility. Suniti looks at Dhruva and says, Dhirgam swashanti vijinasya param apashyati balakamaha bala. Suniti was also trembling. She was also breathing heavily because she too is in a state of shock and grief. But she is able to overcome. And in a balanced state, not knowing what is the way out, she addresses Dhruva. Ma amangalam tata pareshumam sthaha bhunte jeno yat paradukkadastat. Look at the way Suniti handles the situation. She looks at Dhruva. Dhruva has come back complaining of the dishonor that was meted out to him. And she says, Hey Dhruva, ma amangalam tata pareshumam sthaha. You should not be thinking of anything inauspicious for anyone, for others. Basically, she's saying, do not think ill of your father. Do not think ill of your stepmother. Do not think ill of your stepbrother Uttama. Why? She says, Bhunkte jenoyat paradukkadastat. Because if you want to inflict pain upon them, only you will end up suffering more than them. The heaviest burden that we all hold on to is the burden of resentment, the burden of grudge. Now imagine somebody is walking along holding a very huge, heavy bag, walking along carrying a huge physical load. There is no way that that person can enjoy the scenery around. Even if he is walking through the most scenic roads, there is no way that that person would be able to enjoy, relish that walk. Similarly, holding on to grudges, there is no way one can relish and enjoy one's life's journey. Physical burden or emotional burden, both are to be avoided. Holding on to a grudge against someone, Suniti here clearly says, hey, Dhruva, is not going to help you at all. Contrarily, it's only going to burden you more emotionally, and you would not be able to act wisely. And carrying this burden, you would not be able to achieve anything in life. You would not be able to relish life's journey. So therefore, ma amangalam tata pareshu mamstaha bhunkte jenoyat paradukkadastat. So first and foremost here, Suniti directly addresses Dhruva's concern. Dhruva possibly wanted some kind of a revenge. After all, he's a very young Kshatriya boy. And what do you expect a young Kshatriya? So Suniti addresses straight away and then gets Dhruva's attention. She says, Atishta. Hey Dhruva, Atishta tattata vimatsarastvam. She says, you have to execute something, hey Dhruva. You have a duty on hand, no doubt. But she says, tattata vimatsarastvam. But you have to do it without any envy. Vimatsara. You cannot be envious of Uttama. Just because you are deprived of your father's love or you are deprived of honor, just because you have been dishonored, does not mean that you should now be envious of somebody who possibly you think has that which you don't. So therefore, atishtatata vimatsarastvam uktam samatrapi yadavyalikam Aradhya adokshaja pada padmam yadichase adyasanam uttamoyata. She says, after all, Suruchi was not wrong. Dhruva is shocked. His own mother is now saying, if you thought Suruchi is wrong, Dhruva, let me correct you. She might have been harsh, but she is not wrong. What did she say? She said, if you wanted to achieve anything, if you wanted to achieve the throne, go and pray to the Supreme. Why are you just shouting there, asking for it, when it's not being given to you? After all, what did she tell you? She asked you to go pray to the Supreme. That's exactly what you should be doing. So she is not wrong. She might have told it harshly, but she is factual. Only Bhagavan can reward you with anything that you desire. There is no point in going and asking everyone and anyone to fulfill your desires. Nobody can fulfill anybody's desires. If there is someone who can fulfill any desire, it is only Bhagavan. So therefore, what is the point in barking up the wrong tree? So Suniti says, Suruchi is not wrong at all. She is factual. Uktam samatrapi yadavyalikam. Therefore, hey Dhruva, All that you need to do is Atishtha. Go and execute what she said. Aradhya Adhokshaja Padapadmam. Go and worship the Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja is one, Bhagavan, the Supreme, who is transcendent to our senses. He's beyond our senses. He is the one, even if we need to fulfill our sensual desires, the one who is beyond the senses, he alone can fulfill even those desires. He is not just the fulfiller of spiritual desires. He is also the fulfiller of material desires as well. Nobody else. So therefore, yadichase adyasanam uttamo yata. So therefore, hey Dhruva, my advice to you is to exactly follow what your stepmother said. Just go and execute her order. Go start worshipping Narayana, and he alone can find a way out for you. Let me give you a couple of examples with which you can relate to. Suniti says, he says, Dhruva, yasyangri padmam paricharya vishvanubhayatta gunavipattehe ajo adyatishtat kalu parametsyam padam jitantva swayanabha vindyadyam. She says, Brahma, who is your great grandfather, Brahma qualified to become a creator only with the grace of Narayana. And that Bhagavan, who even the yogis constantly keep contemplating, renouncing everything else, he alone can fulfill all your desires. Take the example of Brahma and then says, why Brahma? Let me give you an example of your grandfather. Tatha manurvo Bhagavan pitamaha yam ekamatya purudakshinaimakaihi. Swayambhuva Manu is known to perform all kinds of yajna, all kinds of dana, but he performed everything ekamatya. He performed them rooted in bhakti, with unflinching devotion. And it is because of that, Ishtva vipede duravapamanyaha bhaumyam sukham divyam atapavargam. That is the reason why he could succeed. All the success that Swayambhuva Manu had, it is only because of this. Therefore, Suniti here is giving a simple success formula to Dhruva. Hey Dhruva, any kind of success is only a byproduct of your devotional service to Bhagavan. Do not worry about your success. Do not worry about whether you will attain, whether your wishes, your desires will get fulfilled or not. If you engage in devotional service to Bhagavan, be assured that all your desires will be fulfilled. Success is a byproduct of your devotional service to Narayana. And then Suniti continues. She says, Tameva vatsa ashraya bhritya vatsalam. She says, Bhritya vatsala. Now Bhagavan is called Bhritya vatsala, the one who has vatsalya. Vatsalya for all those who do bhakti to him. You have to take ashraya. Tameva vatsa ashraya bhritya vatsalam mumukshibhir mrigya padabja paddhatim ananya bhave nijadharma bhavite manasi avastapi bhajasva purusham. What you have to do, Dhruva, she's now telling him exactly the means, the right means. This is where Dhruva is lucky. He is lucky why he has a wise mother who is able to give a good direction to his deprivation, directing him, giving him the right means, how you can adopt the right means to fulfill your desire. Your desire, you have a material desire, you want honor, you want respect, you want love. You will get them with the right means. What is the right means? Ashraya. You have to take the shelter of Bhritya Vatsala, of that Bhagavan. He says, no, you may think little Dhruva might be like all of us, maybe thinking that that supreme being is far, far away. I don't know where he is. You are asking me to worship him. I don't know where he is. How do I find him? How do I reach him? Is he here? Is he? I don't see him. How? So what is the way? What is the way? How do I find him? And therefore, she says, if you think he is far, far away from you, let me tell you, he is not far away at all. He has an intimate relationship with you and me. He is intimately related to you, me, and everybody else. He is intimately related to this world. Now, Krishna is to be known through 3 R's. He is the root, he is the refuge, he is the reservoir. He is the root. Only then, by knowing him as the 3 R's, we get to know how intimately we are related to him. He is the root, he is the foundation, he is the cause of all causes. He is very much part of the creation. He is not separated from it. Just like how the root of a tree is not separated from the tree. He is very much there. It's like the painter lives in his painting. And Krishna can be very much found. He is related to his own creation. He is the root of all roots. He is the source of all sources. Not only that, he is the refuge. We all seek various kinds of shelters in this world. All kinds of shelters, because we do need shelters at various stages in our life. We all need shelters. But all these shelters are only temporary. There is only one shelter which is permanent. And Dhruva realized that Krishna, he is the shelter, permanent shelter. He is the shelter of all shelters. He is your refuge. And he is the reservoir of everything that you need, everything that you require. There is no other place you need to look at. Whatever you need, you only ask him. He is the reservoir of everything that you need. There is no need for you to go to anybody else. And therefore, the moment, Dhruva, you realize he is the root, he is the refuge, he is the reservoir, then you don't need to worry that whether he is far or near. You worship him, and then you see what happens. And then she says, Nanyam tata padma palashalochanat. Here, she's been talking about that supreme being, that supreme Lord, that Paramatma, that Parabrahman. Now she's coming closer and closer to who is that. Dhruva also needs to be told, who is that? Now she says, Nanyam tata. There is nobody else. There is no other way, Dhruva. This is the only way. If you need your desire to be fulfilled, this is the only way. And what is the way? Worshipping him, that supreme being. Who is that supreme being? Padma Palashalochanaha. Shastras call him Pundarikaksha. Padma Palashalochanaha, the lotus eye. Dukkachidamte mrigayami kanchana. Yo mrigyate hasta grihita padmaya. Shriya itarairanga vimudhyamanaya. Shastras, here also Suniti knows the Shastras. Just like how the Shastras also introduce the Purushottama and then say, who is this Purushottama? Shrischade Lakshmi's Patni. He is Shriyapati. So here also Suniti is saying he is none other than that Shriyapati. That Shri, who is worshipped by all, she worships him. He is Shriyapati. Therefore, you have to surrender, you have to go worship that Shriyapati, and he is the only one who can fulfill all your desires. Now, Dhruva now knows. Now he has the means. Now he has the burning desire. The Dhruva is very keen. Now he wants to achieve something. He has a point to prove. He wants to achieve something which his father is going to be proud of. Not just a place on Uttanapada's lap, but something more. He wants to prove a point to not only Uttanapada, to Uttama, and also Suruchi. He has this burning desire, and he now has a means to achieve that, and he's all set. And Suniti gives him permission, and he goes to the forest to pray and worship. Now, one may ask this question: is it okay to approach Bhagavan with such a very selfish desire? What is happening here? Dhruva, after all, the desire that he has undertaken a journey just for the sake of fulfilling a very materialistic desire. How can this be so inspiring for us? This is why it is inspiring, because we can very easily relate to him, because all our journeys also begin exactly in a similar fashion. So Bhagavatam earlier says, Akamaha sarvakamovo mokshakamaha udaradihi. It says, you can have any desire, or you can have no desire, or you can have the desire of all desires, which is moksha. There is only one thing you need to do. Just go and ask him and him alone. Don't go around asking for fulfillment of desires. Just approach Krishna and worship him, because any desire that you have, he is the fulfiller of your desires. We need to understand that for bhakti, in the case of bhakti, there are two key elements: stimulus, sustenance. Bhakti needs a stimulus. Bhakti needs also sustenance. Stimulus for bhakti can be anything. Stimulus for bhakti can be anything. It can be any material desire. It can, there's no restriction whatsoever. We can ask Krishna anything. No restrictions. And we have several examples. We can ask anything. Stimulus for bhakti can be anything. That is why Krishna also classifies bhaktas. Artho jignasu arthati jnani cha bharatarshabha, he says. Artha arthati. Both are asking Krishna for everything material only. Even Jigyasu is asking for knowledge only. None of them are asking for Krishna. So, stimulus for bhakti, as long as it can kindle and grow bhakti, Krishna says it's well and good. No problem. At least he's only asking Krishna, nobody else. So therefore, here also, stimulus for Dhruva's bhakti is fulfillment of a materialistic desire. But what is important to understand is, any stimulus is okay, but if bhakti has to be sustained over a period of time, that transformation has to eventually happen. Artaha, artarthi, jignasu. Eventually, one has to become a jnani, who is the ultimate bhakta, who will ask only for Krishna and Krishna alone. That is a journey that can take its own sweet time. It requires transformation. And as long as one is on this path, it is okay to be a artaha or arthati. So here also, the reason why Dhruva Charitra is so very relevant to us is because, like each and every one of us, Dhruva has possibly one materialistic desire. Now, if we pull out the list that we have, it's a long list all of us have. But we don't need to worry about this. We don't need to feel uncomfortable having, a pocket full, a long list of desires. It's okay as long as we seek fulfillment of these desires from Krishna and Krishna alone. But over a period of time, like we see what happens to Dhruva as well, the transformation happens because the direction is right. Once we are in the right direction, getting closer and closer to Krishna, the transformation will happen. Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. He will light the lamp of wisdom. So, therefore, here Dhruva begins his journey in a state of deprivation, wanting honor, respect. He wants to prove a point. And with Suniti's blessings, he then starts to approach, and he gets into a forest. And luckily for him, he is blessed to encounter Narada Muni. Now, another great blessing for Dhruva, Narada Muni himself becomes his guru. And when he meets Narada Muni, Narada, obviously, he is Trikala Jnani, he knows what's going on. Narada looks at Dhruva and he says, hey Dhruva, after all, you're a little boy. I don't understand. What is this honor, dishonor, respect? What are you talking of? You are a little boy. Go back, go home, go play. All this achievement, this big goal that you have, all this, you have enough time in life. Narada is testing. Narada is testing Dhruva's determination. Dhruva is Dhruva. His name itself stands for determination, steadfastness. He said, why? Why are you doing this? You better go back home. Dhruva is not an ordinary little boy. Dhruva is very, very keen. He says, there is no way I'm going back. I'm on a mission to achieve a goal. And Narada Muni then immediately looks at Dhruva and says, Vikalpe vidyamanepi nahi asantosha hetavaha. Again, Narada Muni, playing the role of a guru to Dhruva, here not only sets the direction right, now he starts to impart right knowledge to Dhruva. Nahi asantosha hetavaha pumso moham rite bhinna yalloke nija karma bihi. Dhruva, you are saying you have experienced this dishonor. You have been disrespected. You have been deprived of love. Let me tell you, whatever happened to you, Dhruva, you should not be complaining. You should not be complaining. There is no reason for asantosha. This sadness, this grief, there should be no reason. Dhruva is wondering what Narada is saying. He says, if you start blaming people, hey Dhruva, there is no way you can move forward. Stop blaming. Narada is very clear. He says, before you take the next step in this journey, the first thing that you need to do is to stop blaming. Because he says, realize whatever you have experienced is because of your own actions. Yalloke nija karma bihi. Nobody can escape consequences of their own actions. If something has happened to you, Dhruva, it is the consequence of your own actions. Don't blame Suruchi. Don't blame Uttanapada. Don't blame Uttama. If you start blaming, blaming is disempowering. When we start blaming people, blaming things, blaming situations, we become powerless. We lose the capacity to take the corrective course of action. We lose the capacity to make right choices. Blaming is so very disempowering, makes us powerless completely. On the other hand, when we accept situations and take responsibility for the situations, that is empowering. Taking responsibility for any situation, whether it is favorable or unfavorable, does not matter. A favorable or unfavorable situation, an experience, is beyond our control. It is the consequence of actions that have happened in the past. So therefore, you have to accept and take responsibility, which will give you the power to take corrective course of action. So therefore he says, hey Dhruva, what you need to do now is to stop the blame game, because all this while you have been blaming everybody else. Stop the blame game. Only then you will have clarity in terms of taking the right course of action. And then he says, then Narada gives a very, very important message, a soothing message to Dhruva. Paritushye tatastat tavan matrena purushaha daivopasaditam yavad vikshya ishvaram gatim buddhaha. Vikshya, you have to understand, vikshya, see, ishvaragatim. Ishvaragati is the plan of the Lord, of Bhagavan. Buddhaha. He says the wise, those who are wise, understand that everything runs on his will, and they see that there is a grand plan. You are only a cog in the wheel, hey Dhruva. Understand the grand scheme that is being orchestrated by Ishvara. And you have to stop worrying, stop blaming. The source of distress for you now is, the source of all your worry is because of this. And he says, what is the medicine to all the worries? If we have to name one companion, lifelong companion, for all of us. That companion is called worry. You may be thinking, who is this lifelong companion who keeps coming with us right from the time of birth to the time of death? There's only one companion, nobody else. Only one companion. That companion is called worry. And this worry manifests in different kinds of forms, thousands and thousands of forms. Everything is a worry. Childhood is a worry, boyhood is a worry, youthhood is a worry, adulthood is a worry, old age is a worry, spouse is a worry, children are a worry, relationships are a worry, friends are a worry, office is a worry, not working is a worry, working is a worry, making money is a worry, not making money is a worry. Everything is a worry. Now, Narada says, what is the medicine for all these worries? He gives a beautiful answer. He says, Daivopasaditam. He says, Prasada Buddhi. The medicine, He Dhruva, is Prasada Buddhi. Now, if we really look at, when we look at every worry that accompanies us, every form of worry that accompanies us, eventually it's one worry which manifests in several forms. If you look at, when we look at it face to face and look at it eye to eye, we get the answers. What is the reason for the worry? The first reason is we want to control everything, even though we know that it is impossible. We want everything my way, everything my time frame, as though I have total control on time. My time frame, my way, knowing that it's beyond my control, and wanting that control will always keep me in a state of worry. The second reason is constantly resisting everything as it happens. Every event that unfolds, I keep resisting it. Because why? It is so very different to my expectation. So therefore, I keep resisting. The more I resist, the more I worry. The third reason is I cannot accept anything as it happens. I cannot accept it. And the fourth reason is I do not understand that every experience is Bhagavad Prasad. As long as I don't understand this. Now, Krishna, the universal doctor, gives us medicines, both bitter and sweet, for our spiritual health. So some medicines are sweet, some medicines are bitter. So experiences can be sweet or bitter, but both are for our good. So therefore, as long as we try to control situations, we try to resist, we try not to accept, and we try not to understand every experience as Krishna Prasada, worry will be our inseparable companion. There is no way to get out of that. So therefore here, Narada is saying, because Narada wants Dhruva to be prepared for the next phase of the journey, where he is going to engage in Bhakti Yoga, a devotional service, and worry is a great hurdle. There is no way a mind full of worries will prevent us from connecting with Krishna, will prevent us from spending quality time with Krishna. If the mind is full of, whatever, we can stand in front of the altar, but still, if the mind is full of worries, there is no way we can give quality time to Krishna. So therefore, Narada is very clear. So therefore, he says, hey Dhruva, first and foremost, it's very important for you to understand, cultivate Prasada Buddhi. Daivopasaditam yavad viksha Ishvara Gati. Ishvara Gati. You have to understand that you have been given a free will for only one reason. The free will given to you, hey Dhruva, is to surrender it to Krishna. Exercise of free will eventually is to surrender it to his will. So therefore, Ishvara Gati, understand that everything is orchestrated by him, and you have to accept everything that happened to you, that will happen to you as Krishna Prasada. And also Narada gives another interesting example to Dhruva in the context of giving him the cause for all his distress, the cause for all his worries. Gunadikan mudam lipset anukrosham gunadhamat maitrim samanad anvichen natapay abhihuye. when we deal with people, our relationships that we have also, Narada says, is a source of causing distress, a source of worries. How? The kind of people they deal with. There are those who may be more virtuous, more qualified than us. When we relate with those who are more qualified, we normally tend to develop jealousy. On the other hand, when we deal with people who are less qualified, we become condescending, we become proud, we look down upon. And when we deal with people who are more or less equal, we start to compete. So all these three are sources of distress, all sources of worry. Narada, therefore, he says, Gunadikan mudam lipset anukrosham gunadhamat. Therefore, Dhruva, when you deal with those who are highly qualified than you and more virtuous, you should be very pleased. You should consider yourself blessed to relate with them. And when you deal with those who are less fortunate, less qualified than you, you should be compassionate. Anukrosham. And when you deal with Maitrim Samanad Avichet Natapayar Abhibhuyate. And when you deal with those who are equal to you, you have to become friendly with them. This is the only way. So Narada here is preparing Dhruva in terms of how to overcome all kinds of distress and be prepared for the next journey. And he says, finally, Narada asks him, do you still want to go ahead? What do you want to achieve, hey Dhruva? What do you want to achieve? You say that you have been instructed to go and worship Narayana, and you want to find where he is, and you want to know how to worship him. But let me ask you, I still give you another chance. Do you want to proceed or you want to go back? Dhruva says, no way of going back. No way of going back. And he says, let me declare. Looks at Narada eye to eye, and Dhruva, the little boy, he has huge goals, high ambitions. He says, Padam Tribhuvanot Krishtam Jikisho Sadhuvatmame Bruhi Asmat Pitrubhir Brahman Anyerapi Anadishtitham. He says, I want to achieve that exalted place, which is, I do not want the lap of my father anymore. I do not want the throne of Uttanapada anymore. I want to achieve something even not my father, not my grandfather, not even Brahma has achieved so far. I want to aim. This is like aiming for the stars. Big goal. He says, that is what I want to achieve. That is what my mission is all about. And therefore, what should I do? And Narada immediately says, the answer is very simple. Let me tell you. Jananya abhidah pantah savai nisreyasaste bhagavan vasudevastam bhajatam ramanatmana. You should do exactly what your mother already told you. Janani, Suniti, your mother, she has already instructed that you must worship Narayana, and therefore the means to achieve this big goal that you have, getting that exalted position, which even Swayambhuva Manu, even Brahma has not experienced, has not achieved, that is only possible by worshipping Narayana. And why? Dharmartha kama mokshakhyam yaiche shreya atmanaha ekam hi eva hares tatra karanam padasevanam. Be it dharma, artha, kama or moksha, the four objectives of life. For all the objectives, your object of worship should be Narayana only. Narada knows that when one starts with Narayana as his object, to achieve any objective, it could be dharma, artha, kama or moksha, it does not matter. Eventually, the transformation will happen. Both the object and objective will be Krishna. That is the transformation that is going to happen to Dhruva. So therefore, let me now Dhruva wanted the means to achieve. So Narada is now tells him the only way is to cultivate dhyana. Practice dhyana on Narayana. Perform Bhakti Yoga as part of Anga of Bhakti. You have to perform dhyana. What you have to do is to learn how to control your senses, how to master your senses, master your prana, master your mind, and perform dhyana, constant, unceasing, unflinching contemplation on Bhagavan. And what kind of dhyana? You have to contemplate on the beautiful Rupa, Divyamangala Vigraha of Narayana. Prasadhabimukam Shasvat Prasanna Vadanekshanam Sunasam Subhruvam Charu Kapola Surasundaram. Narada is explaining the enchanting beauty of Bhagavan. He says, Srivatsankam Ghanashyamam. He has the Srivatsa mark on his chest. Ghanashyamam. He has that hue of the dark rain-bearing cloud, darkish blue. Purusham Vanamalinam Shankachakra Gada Padmaihi Abhivyakta Chaturbhujam. Four-handed Shanka Chakra Gada Padma. He's so very beautiful, adorned with all kinds of divine ornaments. Kiritinam, Kundalinam, Keyura, Palayanvitam, Kaustuba Abharana Grivam, Pita Kausheya Vasasam. He explains the Rupa, Divyamangala Vigraha of Narayana. And he says, hey Dhruva, you have to contemplate, do dhyana on that Divyamangala Vigraha. And not only that, let me also give you a tool with which you can perform this dhyana. And Narada, the Guru, instructs Dhruva, the Sishya, the Dvadasakshari mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Mantrenanena Devasya Kuryat Dravyamayim Buddha Saparyam Vividhe Dravyai Desha Kala Bhaga. He says, you have to go, you have to make a beautiful form of Narayana, and that form you have to start worshipping him with all the prescribed ways in terms of worship you need to. And how do you worship and how do you perform dhyana? By chanting the Dvadasakshari Mahamantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, Bhagavan's namas are all glorious. Narayana, as we all know, Sahasranama, 1,000 names or even more. But when we look at all the namas of Bhagavan, 3 namas stand out. 3 namas stand out. When if we have to divide the namas into 2 categories, the 3 namas which are very, very special for Bhagavan are Vyapaka namas. Vyapaka namas, Avyapaka namas. Every nama of Bhagavan captures Bhagavan's glories, his Rupa, Guna, Vibhuti, Aishwarya. There are only 3 namas which capture his Vyapakatva. Bhagavan is all pervading, all permeating. Only 3 namas capture this Vyapakatva of Bhagavan, and therefore they are very special. Narayana, Vishnu, Vasudeva. That is why the Shastras declare Narayanaya Vidmahe Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishnu Prachodayat. These 3 namas are very, very special. Here, Narada is instructing Dvadasakshari based on one of the Vyapaka namas, which is the Vasudeva nama. Now here, incidentally, the speciality of the Dvadasakshari, it has 2 glorious namas of Bhagavan. Bhagavan and Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jnana Shakti Balaishwarya Virya Tejam Saseshataha Bhagavat Shabdavachyani Vinaheyer Gunadivihi. Bhagavan, only he can be called Bhagavan because Narayana has unsurpassed opulences in 6 gunas in full. Jnana, Shakti, Bala, Aishwarya, Virya, Tejas. Bhaga is treasure of these Kalyana gunas. Therefore, he is Bhagavan. He is Vasudeva. Vasudeva is another beautiful Vyapaka nama. Sarvam Vasati. Vas, the root of Vasudeva. Sarvam Vasati, Sarvatra Vasati. Sarvam Vasati. Everything dwells in him. He is like a mother who protects within him this entire universe. Sarvam Vasati. Everything dwells in him. Sarvatra Vasati. He dwells in everything. immanence and transcendence at the same time. A very special nama for Vasudeva. So therefore here, this instruction that is given to Dhruva, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, you have to chant this mantra, and while chanting, you also, hey Dhruva, visualize the Divyamangala Vigraha of Narayana and perform. So Dhruva is being instructed here to perform a mantra-based dhyana. It is very important. This dhyana that Narada is instructing, it is very important to understand the significance. Dhyana, when it is translated loosely, in English we say meditation. But meditation can mean many things. Any deep thinking is meditation. But dhyana is much more than deep thinking. Dhyana is a shift of our consciousness from ever-changing material matter to the unchanging spiritual. That shift has to happen. And dhyana here is purifying as well. There is a process of purification also. It is not just concentration and contemplation. There is also a process of purification. Therefore, if we meditate on a flower, meditate on any object, it can give limited benefits, but it cannot purify. It can at most cultivate the power to concentrate and focus. But purification happens only when we start to contemplate on the Divyamangala Rupa of Bhagavan. Also, purification happens only when we chant a mantra. So therefore, a dhyana, when it is mantra based, because mantaram trayate iti mantraha. Mantra is something which protects those who chant. Bhagavan becomes Shabda Brahman. He takes the form of the mantra. Bhagavan himself is mantra. Ojas tejo dyudiraha prakashatma pratapanaha riddhaspashtaksharo mantraha chandramshur bhaskara dyutihi. Bhagavan himself has a nama mantra. He is mantra. Mantra and Bhagavan are not different. And therefore, when dhyana is done by chanting a mantra, it is not only effective, it is also joyful. Now, doing dry meditation on any object or just no object is like using just our willpower and nothing else. It is like climbing a multi-story building through using a staircase. On the other hand, meditating on Bhagavan with a mantra that can invoke him is like taking an elevator. The elevator has the power to just take us. The mantra has the power to elevate our consciousness. And therefore, a dhyana has to necessarily be based on a mantra that invokes Bhagavan. So therefore, Narada here says, Paricharya Bhagavato Yavatya Purva Sevitaha Ta Mantra Hridaye Naiva or Mantra Murtaye. Mantra Murtaye. Bhagavan is Mantra Murti. So when you chant a mantra, Bhagavan manifests himself. And staying connected with him becomes a lot more easier. And Narada then concludes his instructions. He says, Evam kayena manasa vachasa cha manogatam paricharyamano bhagavan bhaktimat paricharyaya pumsam amayinam samyak bhajatam bhavavardanaha shreyo dishati abhimatam yad dharmadishu dehinam. The only way when you worship Bhagavan is to use all your faculties. Kayena manasa vacha. Your body, your speech, your mind, all have to be put to use completely in the process of serving him. Only then you can bring them under control and eventually master. So therefore, Narada instructs Dhruva, hey Dhruva, proceed to Madhuvana. Madhuvana, the beautiful forests on the banks of Yamuna. Proceed to Madhuvana and there start preparing for this worship. Start preparing. You go prepare a beautiful form of Bhagavan as I instructed and start to worship him and do dhyana on him, and with chanting this Dwadasakshari Maha Mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dhruva is now elated. Now he has the tool. He has the tool to achieve his goal. Even now, Dhruva begins his dhyana with the goal of fulfilling his material desire. We will see how the transformation eventually happens. But Dhruva is now very keen to start. He rushes to Madhuvana. Ityuktastam parikramya pranamya cha nipaparbhakaha. He immediately, to the Guru, Narada, he prostrates, he circumambulates Narada, thanks Narada profusely, and he proceeds. Yayau Madhuvanam Punyam Hares Charana Charchitam. Madhuvana Hares Charana Charchitam. Imprinted with the lotus imprints of Krishna. Madhuvana, on the banks of Yamuna, it has his imprints of Krishna's footprints. What other place that one can hope for to engage in dhyana on him? And therefore, Dhruva proceeds to Madhuvana to start his dhyana on Krishna. What transpires next? We will wait until next session. Until then, let us contemplate on the Dwadasakshari mantra. Together, let us chant the Dwadasakshari 3 times.